So, if I can use my food waste for something productive, like creating nutrient-rich soil to grow my own garden, then why not try it?
We have a glass, like a mason jar, and he'll put like banana peels in it with water the plants with it. And so then it's like a nutrient filled water. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey, everybody, welcome to our Motivation Manifestation Monday. And okay, Stephanie, before we dive into today's episode, I just want to remind everyone that our Etsy shop is open and we have some really cool stickers with more designs coming soon. So please go check it out, buy a sticker to support the show. And we are also starting our new Patreon format this week. So if you love the show and you want to hear more, for just $5 a month, you can join our Patreon community and get access to additional short weekly podcast episodes and content that isn't available on our main podcast and that we're not going to be posting on our social media. And when you guys join Patreon, you'll also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker. So again, if you love the show, check out both of these new options for supporting us. And I just want to say we are so appreciative of our audience and especially all of our loyal listeners who've been with us since day one. So thank you guys. And I also want to mention one more thing before we get started here. And last Monday, Stephanie, we talked about things you can do to prep for like a doomsday event or like a food and supply shortage. And you mentioned making fluoride-free homemade toothpaste with a recipe using bentonite clay, coconut oil, and peppermint oil. And honestly, when you were talking about it, I thought it sounded kind of gross, but I decided to give it a try. So after we recorded that episode, I purchased all the ingredients and I made a batch myself. And I had to order the bentonite clay and the peppermint oil and some glass jars online. And they arrived last Thursday. So I made the toothpaste on Friday. And I don't know if I used the same recipe as you did, but there was baking soda in it as well. And it called for like 20 to 30 drops of the peppermint oil. And I remember you mentioned you added more than the recipe called for. And I had to do the same because when I followed the recipe, it was kind of like that salty bitterness. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I added some more peppermint and then it was totally tolerable. And I'm not going to say that it's amazing, but it's honestly not bad. And I got used to it within a couple brushings. And I have to say that even in just a couple days, I have noticed like a huge difference in how clean my teeth and my mouth feel, which I was literally surprised by. And when I wake up, my teeth still feel clean. And I'm actually starting to like the stuff. So I'm going to keep making it and using it. And I wanted to say thank you for sharing that with not just everybody, but also with me, because I'm excited about being able to make my own toothpaste.
I'm glad you tried it. And yeah, the texture it's kind of like gritty.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably because of the baking soda, which mine did have baking soda. I probably forgot to mention that. But I've been using it for a while now. And like, I can't imagine going back to normal toothpaste now just because like it is a different feeling in your mouth. Like I
Mhm.
do feel like my mouth is fresher and cleaner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was in the store yesterday looking in the mouthwash aisle because I wanted to see if I could find like fluoride free mouthwash, which by the way, I could not find it. And I'm looking and the Listerine with like the zero alcohol, like the purple one, it was $14. And I was like, what the hell? Like that seemed so outrageous to me. So anyhow, I slapped one of our Biden inflation stickers on it before I left and then I booked it out of the store before they saw me. But yeah, I'll have to get a mouthwash recipe now because I'm not spending $14 on mouthwash.
Yeah, definitely not. And I love that with the sticker. And so, okay, guys, for today's topic, we're kind of keeping in this theme of self-initiated preparedness and taking steps towards some possible like homesteading activities that are easy to do. And so Stephanie and I have decided that today we're going to talk about composting. And I have to say up front, this is an activity that I have always found to be somewhat unappealing. And maybe that's because I grew up in an apartment in the city and we just didn't do that kind of thing. I actually don't think recycling was a thing either, but I didn't even know what composting really was until I went to college. And even then, I associated it with something that like only total hippies did. I remember my aunt and uncle used to save banana peels and vegetable remnants like in an empty plastic lettuce container next to the sink.
Yeah. So my husband does the same exact thing. Like we have a glass, like a mason jar, and he'll put like banana peels in it with water. And then my mom will come over and she's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, is this a science experiment? But like the water, we take the water and water the plants with it. And so then it's like a nutrient filled water. So, you're getting some use out of your scraps.
That's actually really cool. And okay, so I'm doing this now too. So 2 days ago, I was going to throw out some wilted spinach. And then I was like, okay, we're on this like self-sufficiency train. And we talked about doing a podcast episode on composting. And I want to learn how to do this stuff. So instead of like throwing it in the trash like I normally would, I put it on the counter. And then the last couple days, I had eggs and coffee and like some strawberries. So I threw the eggshells and the coffee grounds and the little green tops from the strawberries in there. And so now I'm collecting this little compost pile on my counter. But when I was in college, like this was something I was totally not interested in. And this whole thing came about because I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. And if you don't know what that is, it's like one of the most far left liberal hippie colleges in the country, or at least it was back then, because I'm pretty sure that almost all colleges are fucked at this point. But Berkeley's always been known as this like super liberal school. And back in the 90s, I lived off campus in this like large duplex house with a bunch of super liberal hippie roommates. The kind of like young people who don't really bathe and wear the same clothes for 2 weeks and have unintentional dreads in their hair and sit around getting high all day when they're not in class. And there were like 5 or 6 people that lived upstairs. There were 3 of us downstairs, and there were like 6 other students who lived in a literal tree house in our backyard. And my 2 flatmates downstairs were probably the most normal of the group, and they were both grad students and they at least showered every day, but they were really into composting too. And so basically everyone was except for me. And similar to my aunt and uncle, they would save all their natural food scraps. And then there was this like huge planter area in the middle of the backyard where they would dump everything and like grow vegetables. And they were really into it. And I never paid any attention to it, but I kind of wish I did now because the more I'm looking into composting, the more I think it's actually cool. And like, Stephanie, did you do any composting growing up?
No, we didn't do any composting, but it's funny that you say like the coffee grounds because that's the other thing that we do. We take them and spread them around like in the garden bed, like in the mulch. And when I was growing up, my best friend's mom, she like everyone in the neighborhood like knew her for this. She would save all the food scraps and put them outside, but she did it to feed like the animals. And so like she would attract every animal from the forest. And like it was not unusual to see raccoons and skunks just walk right up to her to get their nightly snack. So like the idea of putting food scraps outside kind of freaked me out as a kid because I'm like, I don't want a skunk, like to walk up to me or attract crazy rodents in my yard. So I wasn't really into it growing up, but I definitely want to give it a try now. And on a side note, I have to know, where did the treehouse people go to the bathroom?
I think it actually had a bathroom in there. I mean, it was like a
No
literal,
way.
yeah, it was like a literal small wooden house in the trees. And it was a fairly decent sized tree. And it was a like straight up tree house that you had to climb up an outside ladder to get in. And like it just smelled like marijuana and mold inside. And so I didn't really hang out there much. But I mean, it seems kind of cool looking back. Like that would be awesome to have like a treehouse office or something.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe not to live in though with
Yes, not to
six
live.
other people.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but like I'm pretty sure all of our listeners should know by now that, Stephanie and I are clearly not like climate alarmists or activists, but we both do care about the environment and not being wasteful. So if I can use my food waste for something productive, like creating nutrient-rich soil to grow my own garden and contribute to growing healthier plants instead of just throwing these things in the trash to rot, then why not try it? And, for the people who are into climate change, even the EPA says that composting is nature's way of recycling.
And don't you notice, like now that you've started saving scraps and stuff, that you feel bad if you throw something out?
Yes.
And you realize how much trash we accumulate that
Mhm.
is so unneeded. Like that's kind of where my mindset is right now.
Exactly. And like I try to eat a lot of natural foods. So I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and I cook more than I go out. Um, and so before like starting my little compost container a couple days ago, I had been throwing all my scraps in the trash. And when I make my coffee every morning, I always just like toss the coffee grounds in the trash as well. And then, after doing some research into what you can actually put in a compost pile, I realized that I'm totally wasting all of this stuff that I could be gardening with. And so like I said, I'm going to see how this goes, right? But the awesome thing about composting is like you really don't need a large yard or a ton of space to do it. You can have a tiny little garden plot. If you go online, you can find all sorts of creative ideas for how to make like cheap compost bins out of trash cans and wire mesh. You can make a box out of cedar wood planks. Or if you want to get fancy and get equipment that does all the work for you, you can go on Amazon and get this thing called a dual chamber tumbling composter. And they range anywhere from like, I saw one that was on sale for $49 up to about 120 or more, depending on the brand and the size. And it's like this all in one compost bin. It aerates and rotates itself so you don't have to mix it by hand. And my favorite part is it keeps the pests away because they can't get into the compost in the container, which is a total plus for me because, like you, I don't want to attract rodents. So, since I've decided to give composting a go, I chose to go with one of these self contained tumbling composters that I saw on Amazon because, quite honestly, I already have my hands full with all my animals. And like I said, I don't want to attract any more critters into my yard. So I looked at the reviews of all of these different composting bins and I ended up buying a 43-gallon Vivasun outdoor dual rotating batch tumbling compost bin for around $100. And it should be arriving by the end of the week. So I'm excited to try it. But if you want to do like DIY composting the old school way, as far as the concept of composting itself, it really doesn't seem that difficult. So I was reading an article in countryliving.com, and it was talking about how it doesn't matter whether you keep your compost in the sun or the shade. It just keep in mind that like it can start to smell and it doesn't always look pretty. And like we just said, it can attract rodents and critters. So maybe you don't want to put it in your front yard. Um, but it seems like super easy to do. The article was saying you really just need to balance live green plant materials with like dead carbon rich plant materials, like green and brown. And it was describing green materials as things like fruit and vegetable scraps, eggshells, grass clippings, coffee grounds, tea bags. And then brown materials were things like dead or dry leaves, wood chips, straw, chopped up twigs, paper towels or napkins. And I found this to be odd, Stephanie, but the article mentioned using dryer lint.
Right before this podcast, I just dumped out the dryer lint. We have like a little box next to the dryer, so I'm gonna have to go fish it out of the out of the garbage now. But I didn't know you could use paper towels. I guess that makes sense, but I've just never really thought of that as being something you could throw in there.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's like pretty much anything that naturally breaks down over time. But then I also read there's certain things you should never put in your compost pile, like pet waste, meat scraps, whole eggs, bones, dairy, fats, leftovers, or diseased plant materials and weeds. And like this should be obvious, but you can't compost inorganic material like plastic or metal. So like don't throw away your yogurt or milk containers or your tuna cans in your compost pile. But I also read that you can compost horse and goat manure. So that's a plus for me. And I'm kind of excited about that too, because I have plenty of that here. So I'm going to mix it all up
And put it to
together.
good use.
Exactly. And so, in order to create the most efficient and effective compost pile that will break down easily, you're supposed to layer like wet and dry materials and think of it like making a lasagna as you start to build your compost pile. And the article said the ideal ratio is 3 parts of brown materials to 1 part of green materials. And if you have things like whole banana peels, you want to chop it up into smaller pieces before you start composting because the smaller pieces decompose more quickly. And then you'll need to periodically water your compost pile because it needs moisture in order for microorganisms to grow and break down the material. But you don't want too much moisture because then the shit starts to smell, and too much water will make the decomposition process go slower. So it basically, the article said like the correct moisture level should be like a wrung out sponge and not a sopping wet sponge. And then you'll also need to mix your pile once or twice a month to introduce oxygen to help speed up the decomposition process. And depending on the size of your compost pile, you can just use like a garden fork or a rake, or I guess if you really want to get in there and dig around, you can use your hands. I probably wouldn't be doing that, but I guess if it gets too wet and it starts to smell, you just mix it up a bit and throw some more dry ingredients in there. And then if you really want to get technical, you monitor the temperature and make sure it's between 110 and 145 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's apparently hot enough to kill any lurking disease organisms. But Stephanie, aside from like, okay, you separate the green and brown layers, you add some water and you mix it up from time to time, it sounds like the whole idea is fairly low maintenance.
Yeah. Well, and here in Florida, I feel like the 110 to 145 degrees would be pretty easy to achieve. I think my biggest concern with it is like snakes and lizards getting in there because we get a lot of them in our yard and like they can fit into tiny little crevices. And so I could definitely see them figuring out a way to get in there. So I don't know, I'll have to think about that. But I did get a banana tree and I was reading up on it and it said that they need a ton of nutrients. And so like I bought fertilizer, but I feel like they're going to need a little bit more than just that. Like they're going to need some compost. So
So
I don't
wait,
know.
if you use the banana peel waterer that you talked about
Yeah.
and you add that to the banana tree, I wonder how that's going to work.
Well, and then I'm wondering like I could probably do all kinds of things like the banana peel and orange peel. I've got the coffee grounds. Like maybe I can just keep doing that and see. Maybe that'll be my little experiment to see how well this grows with this nutrient rich water and then spreading the coffee grounds like near the base of the tree, like the root area. And maybe I'll try that. And then if that doesn't work, I'll do the composting. But I did buy a citric based fertilizer and the people at the nursery said that that's like a good one for any of these fruit trees, even if it's not a citric fruit tree, to use that citric fertilizer and to do it about once a month. And then that should give it like a lot of good nutrients. So I'm kind of learning as I go.
Yeah, and I've always had a black thumb and like I just don't grow plants well. Like I when I was younger, I tried growing flowers, I've tried growing vegetables, and like it doesn't turn out very well. Although last year I got one of those raised garden bed things
Hmm.
and I did grow some bell pepper, zucchini, and cayenne pepper, or tried. But I ended up with like three little mini bell peppers, a few buds of cayenne, and no zucchini. But it was frustrating because the bugs were eating the leaves and eating the vegetables. And so I need to do some research on how to prevent that because I really do want to grow my own vegetables. Um, and I will say, side note, I am proud that I have been able to keep this aloe plant alive in the house for the past few weeks that someone at the gym gave me. But those are like super low maintenance. So maybe that's not really something to be proud of.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, if I can keep something alive, that's good. But back to the whole composting thing. Another thing that the article mentioned is that depending on the weather where you live and how the seasons change, it can take a compost pile a while to break down to the point where it can be used for soil. So you might have to be patient with this process. And you'll know it's ready to be used when it looks crumbly and dark brown and smells earthy. And then at that point, you can mix it into your plant or flower beds. And if you don't like the way it looks, put some mulch on top of it, and then it'll look all pretty. And you were talking about fertilizer, Stephanie, and the article also pointed out that compost is not a substitute for fertilizer because it's not sufficient to use compost alone for heavy feeder plants like tomatoes. But that it's basically a great soil amendment that helps improve drainage and soil compaction, and it'll increase the activity of the soil organisms that enable your plants to grow.
Yeah, and I feel like these are things that we should just already know as human beings. Like they should just be passed down through generations, but I just feel like with all the convenience of technology, we've lost a lot of this like easy important knowledge, like basic survival skills. And so I'm really glad I'm learning this and I feel like I definitely want to teach this to my kids because I just feel like as human beings, we should know how to do this kind of stuff. It should just be inherent and something we teach our kids. So I'm glad we're doing it. This will be fun.
Yeah. And even like the toothpaste thing, like when I was looking at different recipes to see like what was easiest, the one I found was called like the toothpaste your grandma used to make. And so it's like you were saying before, like this is shit that we used to know how to do that we don't do anymore because now we just go for convenience. And I don't think we're alone in wanting to learn these skills because when I went on Amazon to look at that dual chamber compost bin, there were over 7,000 reviews on the one I chose, and over 11,500 people had looked at it, and over 2,000 people had purchased one in the last month. So we are not alone in wanting to learn how to do these things.
Yeah, well, and we did that episode on preppers, and
Yeah.
it's no longer like a weird thing. Most people are prepping. So that's good though. I think it's good that we're opening ourselves up to some of these things that we should already know how to do and have been lost in the last few decades, but we're bringing it back. So hopefully this inspires everyone to give it a try and, start growing like one thing, like Tara's aloe plant. You got to start somewhere, but I think it's important that we all learn how to do this. So there you go. There's some positivity after our depressing Friday episodes. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you back here for our Weird Wednesday episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.